Marcus Chen walked along the Silverflow River with his collection bag in one hand and his scanner in the other. The morning sun made the water sparkle like tiny diamonds. He had been doing this same walk every day for 3 months now, studying the strange plants that grew only near this river. The colony needed answers. The crops they brought from Earth were failing, and people were getting worried about food. Marcus hoped the local plants might hold the key to saving everyone. He stopped near a bend in the river where purple flowers grew in thick clusters. These flowers were different from anything on Earth. They seemed to glow softly in the morning light, and they made a quiet humming sound when the wind touched them. Marcus knelt down and carefully cut a few samples. His scanner beeped as it recorded the plant's energy readings. The numbers were strange, showing patterns he had never seen before. He made notes in his tablet, drawing quick sketches of the flower's unusual shape. That was when he heard it. A soft groan, almost too quiet to notice over the sound of flowing water. Marcus looked up and listened carefully. Nothing. Maybe it was just the wind in the trees. He went back to his work, but then he heard it again. This time it was clearer. Someone was hurt. He stood up quickly and looked around. The sound seemed to come from downstream, past a group of large rocks that stuck out of the water. Marcus left his equipment and hurried toward the noise. Behind the rocks, he found her. A woman lay on the rocky shore, half in and half out of the water. Her clothes were torn and burned, and dark blood stained the rocks around her. She was unconscious. Her breathing shallow and fast. Marcus ran to her side and knelt down. His hands shook as he checked for injuries. She had burns on her arms and chest and a deep cut on her forehead. The burns looked strange, not like fire burns, but something else. They had clean edges, like someone had drawn lines with pure heat. But what surprised Marcus most was how she looked. At first glance, she seemed human. But her arms and legs were longer than normal, and her fingers were more slender. Her skin had a slight shimmer, like oil on water. Even unconscious, there was something different about her face, something that made Marcus think of distant stars. "Hey," he said softly, touching her shoulder gently. "Can you hear me?" She groaned again, but did not open her eyes. Marcus could see she was losing blood from the head wound. If he did not help her soon, she would die. He looked around quickly. His research station was a 20-minute walk away. Too far. He needed to stop the bleeding here and now. Marcus took off his shirt and tore it into strips. He had learned basic first aid in training, but this was the first time he had needed to use it for real. His hands were steady now that he had something to do. He cleaned the head wound with river water and wrapped it tightly with the cloth strips. The burns were harder to deal with. He had nothing for burns except the cool river water. He soaked more cloth and laid it gently over the worst burns on her arms. The woman's breathing got a little better, but she was still unconscious. Marcus knew he had to get her to his station where he had better supplies. He slipped his arms under her carefully and lifted. She was lighter than he expected, but still heavy enough to make the walk difficult. Marcus started back along the river path, moving as quickly as he could without shaking her too much. As he walked, the woman began to speak. Her words were quiet and hard to understand, like she was talking in her sleep. "The convergence comes," she whispered. "Must find the bridge builder. The junction calls." Marcus did not know what she meant, but her voice had a musical quality that made the words sound important. He tried to listen while he walked, but most of what she said was too quiet to hear clearly. Halfway to his station, Marcus noticed something odd. His communication device, which he always kept clipped to his belt, was making strange clicking sounds. The small screen showed random symbols instead of the normal display. This had never happened before. He stopped for a moment to look at it, but the device went back to normal as soon as he stood still. When he started walking again, the strange symbols returned. Marcus decided to worry about the device later. Right now, the woman in his arms needed help more than anything else. His research station was a small building made of metal panels and clear plastic. It had basic living space, a laboratory, and medical supplies. Marcus kicked the door open and carried the woman inside. He laid her on his bed and got to work. The medical kit had real bandages, healing gel, and pain medicine. Marcus cleaned her wounds properly and applied the healing gel to her burns. The gel would help her skin repair itself faster. As he worked, he noticed more strange things about her. Her blood was red like human blood, but it seemed thicker. Her skin felt slightly warm, even where she was not burned. And when he listened to her heart, it beat in an odd rhythm, like it had an extra beat every few seconds. But the strangest thing happened when he was bandaging her arm. For just a moment, her eyes opened. They were not blue or brown or green like human eyes. They were silver, like mirrors, and they seemed to change color as he watched. She looked right at him and said clearly, "Marcus Chen, I found you." Then she was unconscious again, leaving Marcus staring in shock. How did she know his name? And what did she mean, she found him? Marcus finished treating her wounds and covered her with blankets. Then he sat in his chair and tried to think. Nothing about this made sense. There were no other human settlements within hundreds of miles. The only way to reach this planet was by spaceship, and no ships had landed since his colony arrived 3 years ago. So where had this woman come from? And how did she know who he was? Outside, the Silverflow River continued to flow toward the distant mountains, carrying secrets that Marcus was only beginning to understand. Marcus woke up in his chair the next morning with a stiff neck and sore back. Sunlight came through the windows of his research station, and for a moment he forgot about the strange woman. Then he heard her moving in the bed and remembered everything. She was awake, sitting up slowly and looking around the room with those unusual silver eyes. In the daylight, Marcus could see her more clearly. She definitely looked mostly human, but the differences were more obvious now. Her ears came to slight points, and her hair had a blue-black color that seemed to shift in the light. "Good morning," Marcus said softly. He did not want to scare her. "How are you feeling?" She turned to look at him, and her eyes changed from silver to a warm gold color. "Better, thanks to you. My name is Lyra. I'm Marcus Chen." He paused. "Though you already seemed to know that yesterday." Lyra looked confused for a moment. "Did I? I don't remember much from yesterday. The pain was very bad." Marcus decided not to push the question yet. She was still recovering. "Are you hungry? I have food." "Yes, please. I haven't eaten in days." Marcus made breakfast for both of them. Simple food from the colony supplies: bread, dried fruit, and protein bars. As they ate, he watched Lyra carefully. She seemed to enjoy the food, but she ate in a strange way, taking very small bites and chewing each one for a long time. "Where are you from, Lyra?" Marcus asked. "Earth, originally. My ship was part of a long-range exploration mission. We got separated from the main group, and I've been alone for months." She looked down at her hands. "My ship crashed about 2 days ago. I was lucky to escape before it exploded." Marcus nodded, but something felt wrong about her story. The burns on her body looked like weapon marks, not crash injuries, and if her ship had exploded, there should be wreckage somewhere nearby. The colony's sensors would have detected a crash that big, but Marcus decided to be patient. Maybe she was still confused from her injuries. People sometimes remembered things wrong after head trauma. "You can stay here while you recover," he said. "My station has everything you need. The main colony is about 30 miles away, but we can contact them when you're feeling better." "Thank you," Lyra said, and her eyes changed to a soft blue color. "You're very kind." Over the next few days, Marcus took care of Lyra while continuing his plant research. She healed faster than any human he had ever seen. The deep cut on her forehead closed completely in just 2 days. The burns on her arms faded to thin lines and then disappeared entirely. But the most amazing thing was how she seemed to know things about his work. On the 3rd day, Marcus was examining his plant samples under a microscope when Lyra walked over to watch. She looked at the purple flowers he had collected and smiled. "Those are harmony plants," she said. "They sing to each other through the ground." Marcus looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "The roots. They're connected underground in a network. When one plant needs something, it sends chemical signals through the network to ask for help. That's why they grow so well here." Marcus stared at her. He had been studying these plants for months and never figured out how they worked. "How do you know that?" Lyra blinked and her eyes went back to Silver. I'm not sure. It just seems obvious when I look at them." Marcus ran new tests based on what Lyra had told him. She was right. The plants did have underground root connections, and they were sharing nutrients through chemical signals. It was an amazing discovery that could help save the colony's crops. But how had Lyra known just by looking? That night, Marcus tried to call the main colony on his communication device. He wanted to tell them about Lyra and ask if any ships had been detected in the system. But his device was still acting strange. Instead of connecting to the colony, it showed those weird symbols again. "The device has been like this since I found you," Marcus said to Lyra. "Do you know anything about communication interference?" Lyra looked at the device and frowned. "Sometimes, certain minerals can cause problems with electronics. This planet might have deposits that create interference." It was a reasonable explanation, but Marcus noticed she seemed nervous when she said it. The next few days passed quietly. Marcus and Lyra worked together in his laboratory. She had an amazing ability to understand plants and their relationships with each other. With her help, Marcus made more progress in 1 week than he had in 3 months alone. They also talked a lot during meals and in the evenings. Lyra told him stories about Earth, but they were strange stories. She talked about cities and places that Marcus had never heard of, even though he had lived on Earth his whole life before coming to the colony. She also seemed confused by simple things like how to work the food heater or why Marcus wore different clothes each day. "On my ship, we had uniforms," she explained when Marcus asked about it. "The same clothes every day. I'm still getting used to variety." Marcus began to suspect that Lyra was not telling him the whole truth about where she came from. But she was kind and helpful, and he enjoyed her company. After months of working alone, it was nice to have someone to talk to. One morning, Marcus woke up to find Lyra standing by the window, looking out at the river. Her eyes were a deep purple color he had never seen before. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Marcus," she said without turning around, "what do you know about the history of this planet?" "Not much. The survey team said it was uninhabited. No signs of intelligent life. Why?" Lyra pointed toward the river. "Look at the water. Really look at it." Marcus joined her at the window. The river looked the same as always, flowing clear and bright in the morning sun. But as he watched, he began to see something else. There were patterns in the river bottom, straight lines that were too regular to be natural. "Are those structures?" Marcus asked. "I think so. Old ones, buried under the sediment." Marcus felt excitement building in his chest. If there were old structures on this planet, it could mean they were not the first intelligent species to live here. It would be the discovery of a lifetime. "We should investigate," he said. Lyra nodded, but her expression was serious. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I haven't been completely honest about why I'm here." Before she could continue, both of their communication devices started beeping loudly. The screens showed emergency symbols, and a voice came through the speakers. "All colonists, This is colony control. We have detected unknown objects in the outer system. All research teams return to the main colony immediately. This is not a drill. Marcus and Lyra looked at each other. Her eyes had turned silver again, but now they looked worried. "What aren't you telling me, Lyra?" Marcus asked. "I promise I'll explain everything," she said. "But first, we need to look at those structures in the river. There are things about this planet that your people don't understand yet, things that could be very important." Marcus thought about the emergency message. He should go back to the colony like they ordered. But looking at Lyra's worried face, he realized that whatever was happening might be connected to her mysterious arrival. "Okay," he said. "Show me what you know." Outside, the Silverflow River continued to flow. But now Marcus could see that it was carrying more than just water. It was carrying secrets that were about to change everything. Lyra led Marcus downstream along the river, away from his research station. She moved with confidence as if she knew exactly where she was going. Marcus followed, carrying his equipment pack and trying to ignore the emergency messages still coming through his communication device. "How do you know where we're going?" Marcus asked as they climbed over rocks and pushed through thick bushes. "I studied the satellite images of this area," Lyra said, before I arrived here." Marcus noticed her hesitation, but he did not push for details yet. He was more curious about what they would find. After an hour of walking, they reached a place where the river curved sharply to the left. The water was deeper here, and the current was slower. Lyra stopped and pointed to a spot where the riverbank was higher than the rest. "There," she said. "Can you see it?" Marcus looked carefully. At first, he saw only dirt and rocks covered with moss and small plants, but as his eyes adjusted, he began to make out shapes that were too straight and regular to be natural. Rectangular blocks, curved arches, the remains of walls. "It's a building," he whispered. "Part of a whole city," Lyra corrected. "Most of it is buried, but the structures go on for miles underground." Marcus set up his equipment and began scanning the area. His devices showed massive stone and metal structures beneath the surface. Whatever civilization had built this place, they had been here for a very long time. The scans suggested the buildings were thousands of years old. "Who built this?" Marcus asked. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. She stood looking at the ruins with an expression that seemed sad and hopeful at the same time. Her eyes were purple again. "Marcus," she said finally, "I need to tell you the truth. I'm not from Earth." "Not exactly." Marcus stopped working and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "My people are human, but not the same humans as your colony. We left Earth thousands of years ago, long before your civilization developed space travel. We've been living among the stars ever since, learning from other species, and changing ourselves to survive in different environments." Marcus felt his world shift. "You're saying there are other human civilizations? Older ones?" "Many of them. Some stayed close to human form. Others changed more dramatically. My people, the synthesis, chose to blend with beneficial organisms we found on other worlds. That's why I look different. That's why I heal so fast." Marcus sat down on a rock trying to process this information. "And you came here because we've been watching your expansion from Earth. Your species has something special, Marcus. Something that even we lost over the centuries." "What's that?" Lyra smiled, and her eyes changed to warm gold. "You still care about individuals. You still help strangers without asking what you'll get in return. When you found me by the river, you didn't hesitate. You just helped, even though I might have been dangerous." Marcus thought about that moment. She was right. He had not thought about danger or reward. He had just seen someone who needed help. "Most species lose that instinct as they become more advanced," Lyra continued. "They become careful, suspicious. They help only their own kind. But humans from Earth still have that spark of universal compassion. That's why the galaxy needs you." "The galaxy?" Lyra nodded toward the buried ruins. "This planet sits on one of the most important hyperspace junctions in the galaxy. Ships can jump from here to dozens of different star systems in just a few hours. Whoever controls this junction controls trade and travel for this entire sector of space." Marcus began to understand. "And different species want to control it." "Yes, some want to use it for peaceful trade and exploration. Others want to use it to build military bases and expand their empires. Right now, there's a balance because no one can activate the junction." "Why not?" "Because the builders designed it to only work for certain people. People with the right genetic markers and the right personality traits." Marcus looked at the ruins with new eyes. Ancient alien technology, hidden on a planet his people had thought was empty. "And you think I have these genetic markers?" "I know you do. That's why I'm here, Marcus. My people have been searching for someone like you for decades. Someone who has the genetic compatibility and the moral character to activate the junction safely." Before Marcus could respond, his communication device beeped again. But this time, the message was different. Instead of the emergency signal from the colony, there was a new voice. A cold, mechanical voice that spoke in perfect English. "Attention, human settlement. This is Commander Thek of the Hegemony Fleet. You are occupying territory that belongs to us. You have one standard day to evacuate this planet, or you will be removed by force." Marcus and Lyra looked at each other in alarm. "The Hegemony," Lyra said, and her eyes went dark red. "They're a military alliance of species that believe in conquest through force. They must have detected the hyperspace junction." "How many ships do they have?" "Probably enough to destroy your entire colony without much effort. Your people have brave hearts, but they don't have weapons that can fight starships." Marcus stood up quickly. "We have to warn the colony, help them evacuate." "Marcus, wait!" Lyra caught his arm. "There might be another way. If we can activate the hyperspace junction first, we can call for help from the synthesis and other peaceful species. But it has to be done from the control center." "Where's that?" Lyra pointed to the largest of the buried structures. "Down there, deep underground." Marcus looked at the ruins, then at his equipment, then back at Lyra. His scientific training told him to be careful, to study the situation more before making big decisions. But his human instincts told him that sometimes you had to act fast to help people. "How do we get down there?" Lyra smiled. "The same way I got up here after I was injured. There are tunnels that connect to the river. The builders designed them to be hidden, but accessible." Marcus packed his equipment quickly. As they prepared to enter the tunnels, he thought about everything Lyra had told him. Other human civilizations, ancient alien technology, a galactic conflict that could be decided right here on this quiet planet. It seemed impossible, but it also felt right somehow. His whole life, Marcus had been curious about life beyond Earth. He had studied alien plants and dreamed about meeting other intelligent species. Now he was about to dive into the middle of galactic politics. "Lyra," he said as they walked toward the tunnel entrance she had found. "Why me? You said there must be other humans with the right genetic markers." "There are," she admitted. "But genetics are only part of it. The junction responds to character as much as biology. It needs someone who genuinely cares about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult or dangerous." Marcus thought about that as they climbed down into the darkness under the riverbank. He was scared, but he was also excited. Whatever happened next, he was going to help save his colony and maybe make history in the process. The tunnel was carved from smooth stone that seemed to glow with its own faint light. Ancient symbols covered the walls, and the air felt electric with hidden energy. As they walked deeper underground, Marcus could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from the rocks themselves. "The junction is waking up," Lyra explained. It can sense that someone with the right markers is nearby. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In a few hours, he might have to make decisions that would affect not just his colony, but the entire galaxy. But as they walked deeper into the ancient tunnels, Marcus realized he was not afraid anymore. He was ready to do whatever it took to protect the people he cared about and maybe help build something better for everyone. Behind them, far above ground, the hegemony ships moved closer to the planet, preparing for war. The tunnel led them deeper underground than Marcus had thought possible. The stone walls became smoother and more complex, covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them directly. The humming sound grew stronger with each step. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached a massive chamber carved from solid rock. The ceiling was so high that Marcus could not see the top, even though the walls glowed with soft blue light. In the center of the chamber stood a circular platform made of metal that looked like liquid silver. "This is it," Lyra said quietly. "The Hyperspace Junction Control Center." Marcus walked slowly around the platform, staring in amazement. The metal surface was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to move and flow like water. When he got close enough, the patterns began to glow brighter. "It's responding to you," Lyra said. "Just like I thought it would." "What exactly am I supposed to do with it?" "Touch it. The junction will read your genetic pattern and your intentions. If you're compatible, it will show you how to activate it." Marcus hesitated. "And if I'm not compatible?" "Then nothing happens, and we think of another way to help your colony." Marcus reached out toward the platform, but stopped before touching it. "Lyra, I need to know everything before I do this." "What aren't you still telling me?" Lyra's eyes changed to deep blue and she looked sad. "You're right. There's more." She walked to the edge of the chamber and touched one of the glowing symbols on the wall. The air above them filled with images, like a three-dimensional movie. Marcus saw star maps, showing dozens of solar systems connected by bright lines. "This is the local galactic sector," Lyra explained. "Each line represents a hyperspace route, and this junction, where we are now, is the central hub that connects them all." The images shifted, showing different species and their worlds. Marcus saw beings that looked like giant insects, others that were made of living crystal, and some that seemed to be made of pure energy. All of these species use the hyperspace network for trade, communication, and travel. For thousands of years, there's been peace because no one controlled the central junction. Everyone had equal access. But now that's changing? Yes. 3 different factions are moving to claim this junction. The hegemony, which believes in military conquest. The collective, which wants to control trade for profit. And the synthesis, my people, who want to preserve peaceful cooperation. Marcus studied the star map. What happens if the wrong faction gets control? If the hegemony takes it, they'll use it to launch military campaigns against peaceful worlds. Millions of beings will die in wars of conquest. If the collective takes it, they'll create monopolies that will impoverish entire civilizations. Only the synthesis wants to keep it open for everyone. So why don't you just activate it yourselves? Lyra pointed to one of the symbols on the wall. Because we can't. The builders of this place were incredibly wise. They designed the junction to only respond to a very specific type of person. Someone with the genetic heritage of the original builders, but also someone with the moral character to use the power responsibly. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. And you think I'm that person? We know you are. Our scientists have been studying your species since you left Earth. They've identified several genetic markers that match the original builders. But more importantly, they've been watching how individual humans behave. The images above them changed, showing scenes from Marcus's life, him as a child, sharing his lunch with a hungry classmate. As a teenager, spending his weekends caring for injured animals. as an adult choosing to study alien plants instead of pursuing more profitable careers. We've been watching you specifically for 3 years, Marcus. Ever since you arrived on this planet. The way you treat other life forms, even plants that most people would consider unimportant. The way you risk your safety to help strangers. The way you always try to find solutions that help everyone instead of just yourself. Marcus felt overwhelmed. His entire life had been watched and judged by alien observers. So, when you said you found me by accident, I was sent here to meet you, but not to trick you or force you to do anything. My mission was to observe you closely and see if you really were the person our scientists thought you were. When those hegemony scouts attacked my ship, I crashed near the river, hoping you would find me. There were already hegemony forces here? Scout ships. They've been searching for this junction for months. They found me first and tried to capture me for information. I escaped, but barely. Marcus looked up at the images of different alien species, trying to imagine the scope of what Lyra was asking him to do. If I activate this junction for the synthesis, what happens to human independence? Do we become part of your empire? That's exactly why you're perfect for this job, Lyra said, and her eyes turned golden with what looked like pride. Most people would ask about power or profit. You ask about freedom. She touched another symbol, and the images changed to show a different kind of galactic map. Instead of one central power controlling everything, it showed many different species working together while maintaining their independence. The synthesis doesn't want to rule anyone. We want to create a network where every species can grow and learn from each other while staying free. The junction would be controlled by a council with representatives from many different worlds, including Earth. Marcus walked closer to the platform. The patterns on its surface were glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. And if I say no? Then we try to evacuate as many people as possible before the hegemony arrives in force. Your colony will be destroyed, but some lives might be saved. Before Marcus could respond, the chamber filled with a loud alarm sound. The wall symbols flashed red, and Lyra ran to check them. "What's happening?" Marcus asked. "The hegemony fleet just entered the system. 12 ships, including 3 battle cruisers." Lyra's face was pale. "They'll reach the planet in 4 hours." Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Thousands of colonists who had come here to build new lives, alien species across the galaxy who deserved to live in peace, and somewhere in space, military ships approaching with weapons that could turn this entire planet to ash. "If I activate the junction, how long before help arrives?" "The synthesis fleet is already waiting just outside the system. They can be here in minutes once the junction is active. But Marcus, you need to understand something else." Lyra's expression became very serious. Activating the junction is only the first step. Someone has to stay connected to it, guiding how it works and making sure it's used fairly. The person who activates it becomes its permanent guardian. "You mean I can never leave this planet?" "You can leave, but you'll always be connected to the junction. You'll feel when it's being used, and you'll have the power to shut it down if someone tries to abuse it." It's a lifetime responsibility. Marcus thought about his quiet life as a researcher, his dreams of exploring new worlds and studying alien life forms. If he accepted this responsibility, his life would never be simple again. But then he thought about the colonists, including children and families who had trusted that this world would be safe. He thought about the alien species Lyra had shown him, living their lives in peace across the galaxy. "Lyra, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I do this, the synthesis has to keep their word about freedom and cooperation. No empire building, no controlling other species." Lyra's eyes turned silver, and she spoke in a formal tone. "I promise you, by the ancient bonds that connect all living beings, that the synthesis will honor the principles of freedom and mutual cooperation. We will never use this junction for conquest or control." Marcus felt the truth in her words. Whatever else she had hidden from him, this promise was real. He walked to the platform and put his hand on its surface. The moment his skin touched the metal, the entire chamber exploded with light and sound. Energy flowed through his body like electric water, but instead of pain, it felt like coming home. Images flashed through his mind, showing him the history of the builders, the nature of hyperspace, and the vast network of living worlds that stretched across the galaxy. And in that moment of connection, Marcus understood exactly what he needed to do. Above ground, the hegemony ships continued their approach, unaware that they were about to face something they had never encountered before. A human who could bring the entire galaxy together. The moment Marcus touched the platform, everything changed. Energy flowed through him like lightning made of liquid starlight. His mind expanded beyond his body, connecting to the vast network of hyperspace routes that stretched across the galaxy. Through the junction, he could sense ships moving between star systems. He could feel the hopes and fears of billions of intelligent beings on thousands of different worlds. And he could sense the approaching hegemony fleet, like a dark storm moving toward his planet. But most importantly, he could understand how the junction really worked. And what he learned changed everything. "Lyra," he said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. "The junction isn't just a transportation system. It's alive." Lyra stared at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "The builders didn't just create technology. They created a living network that connects all intelligent life in the galaxy. Every time someone uses hyperspace, they add their experiences and knowledge to the collective understanding of all species." Through his connection to the junction, Marcus could see the true history of the galaxy. Thousands of years ago, the builders had been like humans, curious, compassionate, and eager to explore. They had created the hyperspace network not to control other species, but to help everyone learn from each other. "That's why it only responds to certain people," Marcus continued. "It needs someone who understands that connection and cooperation are more powerful than conquest." The energy flowing through the platform increased, and Marcus felt the junction fully activate. Across the galaxy, hyperspace routes that had been dormant for centuries began to glow with new life. But instead of immediately calling the synthesis fleet, Marcus did something unexpected. He opened a communication channel to every ship within range of the junction. Hegemony warships, synthesis vessels waiting in nearby systems, and even some collective trading fleets that had arrived to see what would happen. "This is Marcus Chen, speaking from the hyperspace junction on Kepler 442c, his voice reached every ship at once. "I'm addressing all factions currently in this system." On the platform, symbols began appearing in the air around him, translating his words into dozens of different languages for all the species listening. "I know you all came here expecting to fight for control of this junction, but I have a different proposal." Through the junction's connection, Marcus could feel the confusion and anger from the hegemony ships. Commander Thek's voice came through the communication system. "Human, you have no authority here. Surrender control of the junction immediately, or we will destroy your colony." "Commander Thek," Marcus replied calmly, "what if I told you that trying to control this junction by force would destroy it completely?" That got everyone's attention. Marcus could sense ships from all factions focusing their sensors on the planet, trying to understand what he meant. The builders designed the junction to work through cooperation, not domination. If anyone tries to use it for military conquest, it shuts down permanently. All hyperspace routes in this sector would be lost forever. This was only partly true, but Marcus had learned something important from his connection to the junction. It was designed to reward cooperation and punish aggression. If he set it up correctly, he could make it impossible for any one faction to control it alone. "I'm going to show you something," Marcus continued. He used his connection to the junction to open temporary hyperspace routes between all the ships in the system, allowing them to communicate directly with each other. For the first time in galactic history, ships from enemy factions could talk to each other instantly, sharing thoughts and perspectives without the delays and distortions of normal space communication. The results were immediate and surprising. A hegemony captain found himself talking to a synthesis scientist who had studied his species' history and culture with great respect. A collective trader discovered that a hegemony engineer had developed solutions to technical problems that had been bothering her for years. Synthesis philosophers began discussing ethics with hegemony soldiers who had never considered that their enemies might have valid points. Within minutes, the rigid hostility between the factions began to crack. When people could communicate directly, sharing experiences and ideas, it became much harder to see each other as enemies. "This is what the junction was really built for," Marcus said to everyone listening. "Not transportation, but connection. The builders understood that when different species can really communicate with each other, they find ways to cooperate instead of fight." But Commander Thek was not convinced. "Impressive technology, human, but it changes nothing. The hegemony has the largest fleet. We can still take this junction by force." "You could try," Marcus agreed, "but here's what would happen." He used the junction to show everyone a simulation. If the hegemony attacked, the other factions would have to defend themselves. The battle would damage the junction's delicate systems. Even if the hegemony won, they would be left with broken technology that couldn't be repaired. "But there's another option," Marcus continued. "What if we create a new kind of system? One where the junction is controlled by a council with representatives from all factions, including humans from Earth." Through the hyperspace communication link, he could feel the different factions considering this idea. It was not what any of them had planned, but it might give everyone something they wanted. The hegemony wants security and defense against threats. The collective wants profitable trade routes. The synthesis wants peaceful cooperation and knowledge sharing. A council system could provide all of these things without anyone having to give up their independence. Marcus felt Lyra's hand on his shoulder. Through their connection to the junction, he could sense her amazement and pride. "The junction will monitor how it's being used," Marcus explained. "If anyone tries to abuse their access for conquest or exploitation, the routes to their territory get temporarily shut down. But species that use it for peaceful trade, exploration, and cultural exchange get better and faster connections." It was a completely new way of thinking about galactic politics. Instead of trying to control others, each species would be rewarded for behaving peacefully and cooperatively. Commander Thek was silent for a long moment. Then his voice came through the communication system, sounding thoughtful instead of aggressive. "This council. How would decisions be made? How do we prevent one faction from gaining too much influence?" Marcus smiled. This was the moment he had been hoping for. Once people started asking practical questions instead of making threats, real negotiation could begin. "Each species gets representation based on their population and their contribution to peaceful galactic cooperation. Decisions require agreement from representatives of at least 3 different factions. And the junction itself has veto power over anything that would harm innocent life." Over the next several hours, with Marcus serving as a bridge between their different ways of thinking, the factions worked out the details of a new galactic confederation. It was not perfect, and it would require constant work to maintain, but it was something no one had thought possible before. A system where cooperation was more profitable than conquest. When the negotiations were finished, Marcus felt the junction's approval flowing through him like warm sunlight. The ancient network was designed for exactly this kind of outcome. As the ships from different factions began working together to establish the new council, Lyra asked Marcus the question he had been expecting. "So what happens to you now? You're connected to the junction permanently. Will you stay here to guard it?" Marcus looked around the chamber, feeling the vast network of hyperspace routes stretching out from this point like the roots of an enormous tree. He could sense ships moving between stars, carrying not just cargo and passengers, but ideas and dreams and hopes for the future. "I think," he said slowly, "that I won't need to stay in one place. The junction is everywhere the network reaches. I can travel and explore, learning about different species and helping to solve problems when they arise. I'll be like a traveling ambassador for cooperation." Lyra's eyes turned golden with joy. "And I'd like to request assignment as your cultural liaison, if the Synthesis Council approves." Marcus laughed. "I'd like that very much." 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of a synthesis exploration ship, watching a binary star system where 3 different species had just established their first joint research station. Through his connection to the hyperspace junction, he could feel the excitement and wonder of scientists from different worlds working together to unlock the secrets of the universe. His quiet life as a plant researcher was over, but his new life as a bridge between species was everything he had ever dreamed of. And across the galaxy, billions of beings were discovering that cooperation could accomplish things that conquest never could. The junction hummed with satisfied energy, its ancient purpose finally fulfilled. The builders would have been proud to see their dream of universal connection becoming reality, one conversation and one friendship at a time. And in a small research station by the Silverflow River on Kepler 442c, purple flowers continued to grow in the place where a wounded stranger had been found by someone who cared enough to help, setting in motion events that changed the destiny of the galaxy.